Hello, beautiful souls. It's Dr. Danny. Where am I right now? Oh my gosh. Look at that. Do you guys know what that peak is right behind me? It's called Temple Isis. I'm here in the Grand Canyon. This is my special edition. It's my 25th wedding anniversary edition of the stars. So we are going to talk a little bit about some of the astrology today. I'm going to show you some of the pictures from the peak right behind me, and I'm also going to share some pictures of my visit in Sedona, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So how are you guys doing? I'm doing fantastic. This is such a marvelous place. It is so beautiful. All of Arizona is just gorgeous. When I talk about Sedona in a little bit, you guys will hopefully understand why. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you the astrology for my anniversary, which is 6/6. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is this larger picture. Right here we've got, if you guys can see my mouse, we've got Mars and Venus up here, we've got the South Node over here, the North Node with Jupiter over here, and we have Pluto with the Moon over here. This general structure creates what we call a mystic square. So a lot of times when we look at squares, we think lessons in astrology. So let me just make sure that's doing that. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. I'm using a different software to record myself today because Zoom's not really working very well out here in the canyon. So at any rate, a square represents a challenge or a lesson in astrology. When you have a mystic square, you have basically two T-squares. So a huge lesson, a huge coalescing of the astrological energies that kind of squeeze down on us and gives you what's called a diamond under pressure. So what we're going to do today is kind of go over each one of these corners and some other aspects that we see in the chart. Okay, the first one I want to talk about before we even get into the mystic square is this Saturn sextiling Jupiter, or Jupiter sextiling Saturn. This is sextiles in astrology are opportunities, okay? So we've got these two energies here. You've got Jupiter conjunct the North Node in Aries, and then you've got Saturn down here in Aquarius. And these two energies are sextiling each other. So let's talk a little bit about Saturn first. So Saturn obtains enlightenment by taking responsibility for what is manifest. Knowingly or unknowingly, we actually manifest everything in our physical reality, even the stuff we hate. So think of the term or the sentence, we build our own prisons, right? We build each block of this prison, and it's laid down with every single decision that we make. If we're triggered or we hate what's happening to us, take a minute just to consider what decisions you've already made, and that may have led you to the point you're at now, either in the distant past or in the recent past. Usually we can easily blame others. So whenever we're in that situation, I'm talking about square energy here, right? So whenever we're in that situation where we feel like somebody or something is happening to us, it's usually our fault. If we go back far enough in time, we're usually the reason we're in the situation that we're in. So once we recognize this kind of Saturn energy, this lesson energy, we can begin to take responsibility for what's actually around us. And that is when Saturn can help us. So I like to look at Saturn from the higher octave, the way it can help us, especially when it's in a nice aspect like a sextile to Jupiter. Now, what does Jupiter do? Jupiter obtains enlightenment through belief and faith. Right now, it's in the constellation of Aries and conjunct the North Node for most of this transit. The stars are asking us to truly believe and have faith in the self and the seed of creation. Right? So the North Node is your dharmic purpose. It's what you get up for every single day. So this is the collective dharmic purpose with the expansive, faithful, believing Jupiter in Aries. So the stars are telling us, have faith in ourselves, believe in our purpose, and go for it. So let's talk about this mystic square. So mystic square with Venus, the two nodes, and Pluto. I go into this in great detail in my Venus transits for the month of Cancer. So check out that video if you want some more detail, but essentially what this looks like to me is a purification of love, right? So you've got Venus in Cancer, the love of love. You have Pluto on the cusp of Sagittarius and Capricorn, transitioning us from the spiritual to the manifest. So these two things are balancing each other. And it's also asking us to look where we started and where we're going with the North Node and the South Node involved. So we already know that Jupiter North Node energy. We already know that Venus in Cancer energy. We already know that Pluto down there. And now we've got the moon. So we've got two feminine energies on this particular day balancing each other. You've also got Mars pretty close to Venus. So you almost have this unification of the divine feminine and the sacred masculine opposing this feminine moon and the empowering and purifying Pluto. So this is a great time to purify that love, to purify that unification. Do check out the Venus transits. It's really good. And then tomorrow, which is 6/6, Mercury enters the constellation of Taurus, transiting from Aries to Taurus. So if you've been noticing that your communications maybe seem kind of hot and fiery and argumentative, what you'll find is that tomorrow, as Mercury enters into Taurus, we're going to have a nice, easygoing energy. It's going to be very easy to speak. Maybe even you don't have to speak. If your Mercury energy is vibing correctly in Taurus, everything's just going to communicate very nicely and in a flowing way. So basically, a transition from fiery dialogue of exchange of ideas to a steady discourse. Now, Mercury is also conjunct with Uranus in Aries. But as it transitions into Taurus, we've got a conjunction that overlaps a cusp. So you have the fiery Uranus, I'm coming out, I'm letting my freak flag fly, I'm being who I am. That's Uranus in Aries. With a Mercury in Taurus, they're conjunct each other, okay? Now they are also trining that Moon-Pluto energy. So that purification energy, that empowerment energy. And the other thing too about Mercury and Uranus is that these guys are octaves of one another. So Mercury is the lower octave and Uranus is the higher octave. Mercury is all about communication, transmission, and receiving of information, ideas, and truth. Whereas Uranus is going to find the new truths, the new way of being. So this cuspy, fiery energy is trining the cuspy energy of Pluto and the moon. So Uranus obtains enlightenment through upgrades and innovation, a new way around obstacles of knowing the self, right? So that's how that's going to work. And then there's two more things that I want to show you, and then I'll show you some pictures. Okay, so the next thing is Mars trining on Chiron. Okay, this is going to happen a little bit later on the 10th, but essentially he's in position to trine Chiron. So get ready for this at the end of the week. So you have the Mars, the will in Cancer, right? So this is more of a subdued Mars, a romantic Mars, kind of speaking in lower tones, whispering in the ear type of energy. Trining on the Chiron in Pisces, which is the collective wounds of humanity. So this is an opportunity to really go inward with will, with determination, with the fiery energy. It's asking you to anyway in Cancer. So sacred masculine, this is an opportunity to look at the wounds, use the flowing energy to heal. Let's see, Mars is also going to enter Leo on the 13th during this Chiron trine. So he'll go from subdued Cancer to romantic and playful Mars energy. So those are all the updates I wanted to talk to you about the 6th. Let me go ahead and just show you some really awesome pictures. So where I am right now, if you guys can see this, this is what they call a peak locator. And basically what happens is you point that to this little divot right here, and then you look straight out. There used to be a telescope there, but you can basically use your phone or your eyeball, and you're going to see the same thing. So basically, let me see if I can, yeah, there we go. So if you look through the locator, what you see is this peak that's right behind me, and this is called Temple Isis. Now, I did post these pictures to my Facebook, so you guys can friend me on Facebook. If you like this video, just give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you guys. So there it is, Temple Isis. So the person that is credited with naming the peaks here after the Egyptian names, because there's also a Horus peak, there's also Osiris and Horus. There's also a Ra Peak. So it's interesting that they have all these Egyptian names. Was one of the first surveyors out here, but there's no record of him actually naming that. So it may have been a word of mouth thing, or it may have been that the indigenous people told him these names, which would have been really neat. But at any rate, there it is, Temple Isis. And then I want to show you guys and talk to you about the Vortex Energy in Sedona. This was absolutely amazing. So here is Bell Rock. This is a short little quarter-of-a-mile path that you take to get to the main path around Bell Rock. And if you curve around here to the left, it gets the steep gets a little bit shallower, so you can actually climb up to a ledge or two. And so my husband and I did that. We walked around to this side over here, facing Courthouse Rock. And I began to play my singing bowl while we were out there. And what we noticed was that the rocks looked a little bit blue. I was also charging a crystal, which appeared blue to our eyes, but our cameras absolutely did not pick it up. We would see these little stones on the ground, and for me, that was actually bright blue with my eyes. But then when we picked it up, it looked gray in my hand, but it looks the same here and here, which is kind of silly. But honestly, that was like the first day that we saw that energy. The next day we went to a place called Cathedral Rock, and we noticed the same phenomenon. Now Bell Rock was a little bit more of a feminine energy, whereas Cathedral Rock, if you look in the background here, I might even be able to zoom in, you can see the little ant people climbing up. And this was a treacherous climb. Like, you stand here when you get up to this ledge and you look up and you're like, wow, can I actually do that? But a lot of people were actually physically driven to go for it, even if they didn't think they could. So I thought that was super interesting. The next day we went to an airport mesa, and then we went to the Chapel of the Holy Cross after that. And that place was really, really interesting. I'm going to stop sharing here for a second so we can just kind of chat face to face, talk seriously about that place. So Chapel of the Holy Cross. When you go to these places, you can feel the tingling, the vibration. It's very, very subtle. You will also hopefully notice the blue rocks as well, like my husband and I did. But if you don't, if you're just a feeler and you walk up to the Chapel of the Holy Cross, you're going to notice that it feels very different. It's like it pulls you in, but then once you're there, it really doesn't give you anything back. Inside of the chapel is gorgeous. They've got a huge 20-foot crucifixion scene, all the stigmata. Jesus is staring down at the adherents, and he's on an apple tree, which is very, very interesting. And a friend of mine said it might be related to the tree of knowledge, or the tree of life, but I've never actually seen a crucifixion scene with an apple tree. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Once you come outside the church, you don't really notice any of the blue rock phenomenon. And there really isn't a place to kind of sit down and charge a crystal. So we were kind of like, okay, this probably isn't really a vortex like they've advertised. But there was still something really sort of strange about it. So as we were walking to the parking lot, we decided we saw a little trail that kind of wound around behind the church. And we took that trail, walked in about a half a mile or so and up a little bit. And at that elevation, you could see the church from where we were. And we actually did notice like little areas where the rocks would look blue and then where they wouldn't, where the crystal would look blue and where they wouldn't. So it was very, very anemic. You know, like the energy was still there, but it felt like it was being contained in a structure of some sort, either, purposely or inadvertently. I couldn't tell you, but that's what I noticed. So at any rate, I'm going to get back to my beautiful trip and journey through Arizona. I hope you all are doing very well. I'll be back on a regular schedule hopefully next week. I am going to also do a Sedona Bell Rock meditation. It'll be a guided meditation. We're going to talk a little bit about the blue energy, and I'm going to guide you guys through a vortex meditation. So I hope y'all will stay tuned for that. And that's all I have for you. So we'll sign out now. Namaste, guys.